everyone, and welcome to Pull Up a Sandbag, 3 coaches, 1 topic. Today I am joined by Bob and Andy, or Shep as everybody knows him as. Before we get started, what we'll do is I'm going to hand you over to Bob and then Andy so they can give you a little introduction, where they're dialing in from, and a little bit about themselves. So over to you, Bob.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Donna.
You're welcome.
I am dialing in from Winter Park, Florida in the U.S. It's about 10 o'clock here. I am a trainee coach with Coaching Minds Global while I'm continuing my career as an architect. Looking forward to that transition. I am married. I'm a father of twin boys who are 47 and a daughter who just graduated college who's 21.
Wow.
Yeah.
But we're not far off the same here. Well, my children aren't 47. I'm not that old. You're old.
Oh, thank you. I didn't feel that until now.
I'm attacking your guests as my start.
I'm so glad I'm here.
I'm sorry. Oh my God.
I'm not that old either. I started very young.
Yeah,
Very
really young.
Italian.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go.
That's all I have to say
You only have 3?
that I know of.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Oh, dear. Thanks, Bob. Sorry. Shep, help.
Help.
Hi everybody, my name's Shep. I'm actually here in Dubai, and I'm a breakthrough coach, and I am a father too. I have 3 wonderful children, a son who's 28, a daughter who's 26, and a daughter who's 23, and I have a little grandson. So I'm a grandfather as well. And like you, Bob, my daughter is also, the eldest daughter has just graduated from university with honours, and has been nominated for a special award within the fashion industry. So this week I'm brimming over with pride, as you can say.
Should be. Yes, you deserve to be.
Yeah, I know. And I just saw your post, and congratulations. The first thing is, congratulations to your daughter, but it's also a proud moment as a parent. So thank you very much, guys, for sharing that. My name's Donna Burfield. My coaching business is called Joy and Purpose Coaching. And that side of things, I love working with parents, not so much about parenting, but supporting the parents with connecting with themselves, with their partner, and ultimately their children. So I'm very, very big on community and connection. I was a teacher for 26 years. So that is one of my passions. I always looked at the environment that I was teaching the children in and making it very inclusive. So I love that. I also run coaches supporting coaches here in Dubai. And again, another passion which has brought me to doing 3 coaches, 1 topic. So I'm very, very fortunate. Like you guys, I'm a parent. I've got 3 gorgeous children who are the love of my life. My daughter is 24, and I've got twin boys who are 19. So yeah, empty nest syndrome at the moment. Still haven't got over it. I will do, but yeah, so proud parent. Okay, let's get on to today's topic. This was quite a difficult one because I know Father's Day is coming up, and I think it's a very, very important topic to hear your side of it and your views. So today we're going to be talking about embracing fatherhood, understanding its meaning, and the responsibilities men face. Before we came on, excuse me, live, we were joking around, and I went, hands up who's had father issues. We're all like, yep. So what I would love to know from both of you is, what does being a father mean personally to you?
Question.
Go ahead, Chep.
I think for me, it's just being that support network now for them. Obviously, when they were little, and they were very, very little, it was very much an equal role. I was determined that that we're going back quite a few years now, that I would get up in the middle of the night and do my share of bottle feeding, when they were on the bottle, when they were, or even, my ex-wife, as it is now, she would express, and then I would get up and I would do the graveyard shift if I could, just so that she could get some sleep. And I think that we looked at it definitely as a partnership, and definitely as, fair share of soiled and dirty diapers, or nappies as we like to call them. The sicky child being vomited on, being urinated on. People think this glamorous role of, you're going to be a parent, and all these little aliens do is vomit all over you and pee all over you and then cover you in poop. And but you'd love them so much that it's, I remember when our firstborn, we went through quite a bit of a rough time before we had Kieran. My ex-wife had a miscarriage, and we weren't married then. We were seeing each other. Shock! We had a child out of wedlock, as it were. We didn't. We lost the first one, and it was quite strange because Sharon never wanted children. I was the one that always wanted kids. She was like that. Nah, I've got a career and I don't want children. But then when we lost the first child, and then we had the second one when Kieran came along, life just all changed. And I know it can sound quite a little bit of a cliche, but I felt this shift within me. It was just like the moment he looked at me and he got these. He was a bit spaced out. To be fair, he'd had a little bit too much pethidine, and they'd given it a little bit late. So when he was born, he was very flat and he wasn't breathing, and he was, there was a lot of stuff going on there, and they were pumping him through full of Narcan to reverse the opiate, and so there was a little bit of anxiousness when he came round. He was just like, ugh, and he's been like that all his life. So. Sorry, Kieran. You're pretty laid back. He's that laid back. He's horizontal. So I think for me now, it's different. Now it's about being there to support us. That's always been there, but give them the room to do what they're going to do. Let them do it. Sometimes you want to jump in still and go, don't do that, do this. But they're at such an age now where for me, it's just be that supportive network there, that mechanism there that they can come and go, Dad, I've got a problem. Can you help me with this? Rather than me turning around and say, you should be doing that. Because they're adults now. When they were 5 and 6 and 7, 13, you can turn around and go, don't do that. But when they as they become older, I've always, I suppose, as a dad, has always turned around to them when they've done something wrong, rather than saying, that's naughty. Saying, what do you think about this? And what do you think that impact is having on the other people? So it's being an educator, being a loving parent, being there to wipe up the tears, to push them along and drive them and give them the room to grow.
Yeah. Brilliant. And it's nice to hear a father say that. Trust me. Bob, for you, what does being a father mean for you?
I love it. I loved it from the first moment. I felt like it was a privilege, and I guess that really is the biggest thing for me. Is it was a privilege, and I loved it. Not that you love the, changing the diaper or the nappy, or being peed on, or them throwing spaghetti on their head and doing all sorts of fun, crazy things. But it's the first moment in your life where you understand what unconditional love can be, because you really don't care.
Yeah.
You don't. You're just there and you just love them. You can change their diaper 50 times in a day or 2 times in a day. It doesn't matter. They can, be have a tough time one day with them, and the next day they're just little angels. But it doesn't matter what happens. That love is just, it's so deep rooted that it's always going to be there. And like you, Shep, it starts out one way as being a provider and a guider, I would say, trying to guide them on the path, being the example, because you can say all the things you want to say, but children are very smart very early, and they recognize if you are not doing what you tell them they should be doing. So you have to lead by example. You have to be the human that you want them to be, or the example you want for them to be in society. And I've been in a couple of interesting situations. So my first marriage was only about 4 years, and she had a daughter that was a year old when we got married. And a year later, we had twins, and she had a tough time. It was they were big boys. They were 8 pounds 5 ounces and 7'14". So a lot of babies. So she was confined to bed for the last 30 days, but born healthy. Everything was fine. But she had a really tough time being a parent, but she also had a tough time anyway with her relationship with her parents. So there was one point in our marriage early on, a couple of years in, where she wanted to go out and be, back then men generally were considered the breadwinner. You bring home the money, and the mom takes care of the children. That was kind of my generation, but we flipped it around because she felt like she deserved to try that. And I was fine. I was like, go for it. I'm still a kid, frankly. I just am. So I love playing with kids. So it's like, I don't have to go to work. I can, I know I got to do the clean the diapers and all the other fun stuff, but I had a blast for about a year and a half. The problem was she never finished schooling, never really developed good skill set to create an income that would provide for the family. So eventually we had to flip back to a more traditional way. And then things went downhill really fast. She had a lot of issues, and so there was some infidelity on her part, and we wound up getting divorced. I couldn't take it twice, so I decided that was enough for me. And then a few years after that, after watching what was going on with her new husband and the way the kids were being treated, my boys at the time, I retained an attorney to go after custody. As it turned out, she brought my sons to see me one summer, and the kids dumped everything. They talked about everything that was going on. And it was, for another day, it's a long story, but they didn't have a good life with their mom. So ironically, this it's one of those moments where you believe the universe has your back and just does what's right. Because I never had to keep the attorney. The state of Florida here in the U.S. Took over, took her to court, found her negligent, awarded me custody of my sons. So I raised my sons from they were about 8 until they were out of college. So I've had pieces and parts, not just the traditional role. And as a single parent, that's really interesting because that can be tough. You're trying, as you know, Donna. It's also very rewarding. I was young when they were born. I was 21 when they were born. So I just felt like an older brother. I mean, we did everything together. So it was wonderful. And I was divorced, and then it took me about 20 years to get over that.
I hear you.
You get your heart broken, you think, no, love isn't necessarily good. But I came back around and on my second marriage, and we had a daughter together who just graduated from university last month in environmental engineering. Yeah, and she's just that's my heart. There, as a father, there is a difference. I never really understood it, but there is a difference in raising boys and girls.
Oh, yeah.
For me, definitely it was.
Yeah.
And part of that's a cultural thing that we've all grown up with, and a kind of a program thing. But so now I'm in the supportive role, like you were saying, Chef. That's what we do. Once they get to a certain age, we're there to guide them and be there. But you're always a parent. If they hurt, you hurt.
Yeah.
You know it. You want to be there. And you just let them know that I'm here any time of day or night if you need anything. And I still love it. I'd have about 10 more if I could.
Oh, this is beautiful. Look, it's not. I really appreciate you guys being so open and honest here, because as a woman, it is not the norm, unfortunately, for men, ex-husbands, to be like that. It's more of a case of, and this isn't meant as a general sweep, but I think if you speak to most women, a lot of women do feel that when the husbands, especially if the husbands divorce them, although I divorced my husband, but that's it. They get on with their new life. You've got the children. If you're lucky, you get child maintenance. If you're lucky, and then it's a struggle and it's a fight with the court. That is a lot more common than for a father to really want. Now, as I said, I'm not saying, this doesn't happen, but it's so nice and refreshing to hear that. My ex-husband wasn't like that at all. My ex-husband lived 10 minutes away, and he refused to see the children. Only every other weekend. Every other weekend, 10 minutes away. And the kids would say, "Can we see Daddy?" I said, "Of course you can see Daddy. It's not a problem." They had days off school or what have you. They'd phone him up. "Can I see you? Can we go out for dinner or something?" "Nope, I'll see you in 10 days' time when it's our weekend." So
wow.
As a parent, it really upsets me how you father a child and there's no, I don't get it. Anyway, let's get on to so how is it, because he's not defending himself, and it's not fair if I talk about him that way. And don't get me started.
But we understand, because it is a big problem, and it's a huge pet peeve for me, because I've been around those kind of men. I was never that person, and I could not understand the mindset. How could you not? How could you not want to be involved?
I came from also. I was a late starter. We had Kieran when I was 29, and I was in the army. So I'd always had a sense of duty, and you started something, you stand by it. And when we got divorced, that was because our relationship broke down. It wasn't that my relationship with my children hadn't broken down. My relationship with their mother had broken down, and her relationship with me had broken down. But I was still there, seeing them every other night. I'd pick them up in the morning and take them to school. When I was, but I worked. When I left the army, and I worked, and I lived I worked away, that was equally as tough, because I would go away for 9 weeks and then come back and then trying to get them as much as they had. And when I got into my next relationship, the first thing that I said, within to my new partner, who's been my partner now for 17 years, was, if you want to jump on this crazy bus, then jump on the bus. But there's 3 little people here, and Amber, I do apologise for what I'm going to say now. The youngest one is fondly still known as Satan. She was the most she was a horrendous little monster you could ever wish to see in your life. I don't love her any differently to any of the others. She was these beautiful piercing blue eyes and this perfect blonde hair, and she was really dainty. But when she didn't want to do something, you couldn't make her do it, no matter what. And she would call herself Samara, or she would call herself Satan. If somebody would come up and say, they go, "Hey, darling, how are you?" And she'd go, and she'd look at them like that and do nothing. And she'd go, "What's your name, sweetie?" And she'd go, "Satan." And I go, and people would come up to me and say, "We've met this very strange child in the toilet." And I go, "Well, that's obviously one of mine." But she was adorable when she got to know you. But I mean, the other 2 were easy. I mean, we had our first 2. They slept through all the time. Kieran and Holly, they would go to bed at 10 o'clock at night, and they'd get up at 7 in the morning. It was heaven. Then we had this little unknown thing come along, and she turned it all up, and it was fun, like you, Bob. It was fun. So when I met my new partner, I turned around and went, "If you want to be part of this, then you have to understand that at this moment in time, you're not going to be the priority. There are 3 little people that are going to be the priority." And when I worked away and I'd go away, my partner picked up the reins and would go and have them every weekend, and would meet them out of school, and they'd go to our house, and they'd stay there. And that then relationship for my ex-wife and my, I still call them my mother and father-in-law. Alas, my father-in-law's passed away, but my mother-in-law, they adored that, because then they were turning around and going, "There's continuity. The kids are getting what they need. I'm getting what I need too." Loads of stuff. Because as soon as you see them, when they come into this world and they look at you, and that even now, I still look at them as, whatever you need, I'm here. If I've got it, you can have it. Sometimes I don't have it, and if I don't have it, then that's the way the world is. But giving them a sense of, you can do this, get out on your own, you have the capability, you have the ability to do this, and if you need some help and support, we're just here.
Well, no, that's great to hear, and I think it's really important to point out here as well. Being a father doesn't necessarily mean you have to be the biological father. It takes more than sperm donation or squirt to be a father.
You couldn't hold out, could you?
Had to come out. It just had to come out.
You may as well finish what you said, Donna. You may as well finish it, because you've shocked both Bob and I today, because we've never been one of them. So.
And I'm glad to hear it. Can I just say? Okay, so what do you think young men, before they start getting into those serious relationships, or not serious, you could be a father after a one-night stand, let's be honest here. What are the responsibilities of being a father?
Well, you've got a whole new human life to be responsible for, and if you don't have the mental capability to understand that, if the girl that you're seeing, because come on, at this age, we can, in our late 50s coming up to 60, we can turn around and say, "You should have put something on it." No. At that age, I don't think like that. We never talked about it when it was my age. If you see this girl and you're going to have a bit of fun, there's consequences to that, and understanding what the consequences are, and going, when I turned around and when my daughter Amber got pregnant, I was quite shocked. I was like, no, you're too young. Go and live some more. That's my wishes. They're not her wishes. Yeah. She wanted the child. She's with a phenomenal partner who looks after her. And I went, as long as you're prepared for it, as long as you know the consequences, and as long as you are willing to, both of you willing to support this, then who am I to say any different? But I think if you're just a lad going out, and I've been coaching a young lad in the UK, and I used this a couple of weeks ago, this exact analogy. I said, what is it that you're doing? Oh, I'm going out with my mates and I'm doing this. And I went, and what else are you doing? And he's going, oh, well, there's a load of girls there. And I went, you do understand that there might be some consequences to what you've got going on through there? I said, because I know you look at me as a 57-year-old guy, but I was once your age. We didn't start out our lives like this. We did start some responsibility. Take responsibility for it. Take responsibility for this new life that you're going to bring into the world, because it doesn't stop when they become 18. It doesn't stop. It never stops. From the moment they are born to the moment they die, if you are a loving, caring parent, don't care whether it's a woman or a man, if you're a loving, caring parent, that responsibility, that love, that ultimate, as Bob said, deep-seated, in-ground love doesn't go away.
Yeah, but Shep, you're talking from an emotional point. I think at some point it's easy for men to walk away. So if you do have that one night stand, or if you are with that partner and then you find out that she's pregnant, we're the ones that are left holding the baby. And guys,
literally, yeah.
Yes. So what do you think society can do to help men or boys going through school, maybe having these discussions? They have those play dolls that you take home and all the rest of it. What can society do to make sure that, men do start taking a bit more responsibility of the lives they bring into this world?
I think there's two things there, Donna. I think that there's got to be a responsibility for girls as well. And I think girls have got to be encouraged to say no, and that no means no. And that, I think that society...
Well, girls do say no, and then they get forced on.
Okay. No, I'm not saying all, but what I'm getting around to is that there needs to be education. And there needs to be education at a younger age. If you look at Holland, for instance, they have a system where they have good sex education. They're very open about how they talk about it. In the UK, for instance, we don't. We wait till they become teenagers. We wait until they're actually on the verge. They've got all these hormones rushing through them, and they're getting the urge that they're going to want to do something. And there's no real thorough sex education. Good understanding of the consequences of what's going to happen, and hold them to account.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, great points. I think one of the components here that I was thinking of while you were talking is there's a generational component here. For instance, with my father, parents are the beginning teachers. They're the ones that need to start the conversation. And my only conversation with my father about sex was, how far did you get? First, second, third base. And I guess I've always been kind of a different guy anyway, but I remember looking at him and thinking, what in the hell did you just ask me? Like, as if I'm going to have this conversation with you in the first place. And I walked out of the room, but that was the only conversation. So parents really need to understand their responsibility in educating their children about it. And even here in the States, for generations, people have been too uptight about sex.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a part of life.
Exactly.
Talk about it. I mean, get it out in the open, all of it. And the educational system needs to do a better job of teaching.
So yes and no. Again, I think we put too much onus on the schools and education systems. I think the parents need to start, stepping up on this. And one of the reasons why I brought up about the father in the child and being able to walk away. I mean, a lot of cases, it's not just like your one night stands or, having a casual relationship and finding out that you're pregnant. There are so many long-term relationships and marriages that, it's easy for the man to pack up and go. And as we discussed a little bit before, you're divorcing your partner. You're leaving your partner. You're not leaving your children. So this is where I'm saying, well, where's the accountability? Because if you take them to court and they don't pay the
But
maintenance, they're not providing for their children.
But this parenting doesn't stop though, Donna, does it? So if you've got this young child, because they are children, they can turn around now. The younger generation can do that as much as they want to. If they haven't got the moral stability to understand that they've got a child on the way and they've got to look forward to it, then there needs to be something. The education needs to be vastly improved, and that comes initially from the parents. And if that child, that boy, wants to walk away, then the parents of that said boy should be telling that boy and educating that boy, you've got a responsibility now. And I think, if it was me and my son got even now he's 27 and he got somebody pregnant and he said, I'm going to walk away. We go, no, Kieran, you can't.
Yeah.
No, because you can walk away from her. That's fine. But you've got to be there to support. And the one thing that I did with all three of mine when they were born was the first thing, when I always remember this, and it came back to bite me very square and firmly in the backside one day. And I looked at, and I got Kieran, and I was looking at him like this, and I went, oh, well, yeah, mate, and I'm brimming up with pride now. I've got goosebumps and everything as I'm recalling this emotion as he was in hospital, and I'm looking at him, and I said, whenever you ask me a question, I will tell you a truthful answer. I won't lie to you. I'll give it you as it is. Then, a few years later, along comes Satan. And along comes Satan. We got Holly in between. Kieran was only quite young when Holly was born, so he didn't really understand. But by the time that Satan was along, he was like 5 or 6. He's starting to, you could see his cogs were going. Bless her, Amber. She was born on Boxing Day, and we went to the hospital to go and pick her up. And I took him, and I got his grandmother with me, and my then wife was in bed. And he goes and he looks in the crib, and he comes up to me and he goes, "Oh, Dad, isn't she beautiful?" And I went, "Yes, Kieran, she's beautiful. I think she's just such a lovely, lovely young child." We didn't know then that she was the spawn of Satan. That must have been something coming from my darkest past. Anyway, no, I'm joking. And she just laughs about it now. She goes, "Yeah, well, you know what? I'd put up with these two. So what do you expect?" But as he looks at her in her crib, and then he gets on the hospital bed to his mum, and he looks at his mum, and he goes, "Oh, Mum, she's beautiful like that." And then he lifts her nightie up, and then he looks at her belly, and he goes, "Where are your stitches?" And Sharon went, "I don't have any stitches, Kieran." And he went, "Well, how did she get out of there? Because yesterday she was in there, and how did she get out of there? And there's no stitches." So both my mother-in-law and my then wife turned around to me and went, "Over to you, Dad." And I went, "What do I do?" So I sat him down, and he had a very basic knowledge of the birds and the bees and what happens. And then in horror, as this has gone into his unconscious mind, he then looks at his mother and he goes, "That means Holly came out of there." "Yes, Kieran." "That means I came out of there." Then he looked at his mother and he looked at his grandmother, and he went, and he put the two and two together, and he went, and then of course he looks at me, and I'm a bit older, and my mother was in her 60s, and he went, "And you came out of that choice." I went, "Yeah, Kieran, we get that." we're all feeling, as adults, feeling quite uncomfortable at this moment in time. But I stuck. Remember, Donna, when we've had loads of chats, and I always say, mean what you say and say what you mean.
Yeah.
And that was a very much mean what you say and say what you mean moment.
Absolutely.
It was quite, after that, it was, all right, this is what, it was popular in the playground. Because, when I grew up, at his age, it was, babies come from under the gooseberry bush. Well, yeah, now he knows I know.
Yeah.
Thank God that's not the case. Although now the case, a lot of people are getting their sex education from porn. So I think I prefer the gooseberry bush, quite frankly.
Yes, definitely. Oh, gosh. I wanted to add on to what Shep was saying, too. At least here in the States, and from what I've seen, we've been, as a world, we've been, and certainly some countries more than others, been in a patriarchal society. So I've watched in my own family, I've watched in other families, this kind of teaching of entitlement as a man. Starts from when you're a boy. You end up getting, little boys end up getting away with things little girls don't. So I've seen a lot of this, and of course it bothers me a lot to see it, but that generational programming is a huge problem that has to change. And I think it is, but my generation was certainly that way. So you grew up thinking you sort of have this entitlement. What do you mean you don't want to do this? Of course we're going to do this. But you're taught the entitlement, but you're not taught the consequences of the entitlement.
Yeah.
So going back to the parenting thing, if you're going to be taught you're allowed to do this, you should be taught the consequences of what those actions are. But I think the biggest problem still is that we see it in home life, we see it in business, entertainment, music industry, all industries where we hear about sexual abuse. And no, not meaning no. Yeah. And for me, in my viewpoint, in watching people and listening to the different generations of men, there's just a lot of programming that came for a lot of years of fathers teaching their sons that they were entitled to this, and you're not. You're not. But if you were taught that, that's what you were taught. But that type of education has to change. I think it is changing. We need more of that, where nobody has any entitlement.
Yeah.
Either side.
I have to. Sorry, but I have to jump on this because when you mentioned that, and it's quite funny. So when I was 7 years old, my dad was drunk and he was about to throw me down the stairs. And one of the things he said to me was, "You're not my child. I've got a twin brother. You and your brother ruined my marriage." So that was the first time I heard anything that was. I then later found out that my mum had an affair. And as I got older, my mum and I talked about it. Both of them when I was born in 1970. It was in Hong Kong. There was a lot of guys coming over from Vietnam for R&R. I mean, the atmosphere in Hong Kong with the forces was quite, different. And they'd traveled over from the UK, first time out of the UK. By and by, at the end of the day, she had an affair and she fell madly in love with somebody. It was only later on when I had my children. My kids were very sick. I'd always been sick as a child. And we didn't know if it was hereditary. I don't know if my dad's my real dad. So I contacted, asking if I can have a DNA test done. And my mum said, no, I can't remember. We were both drunk at that time and he raped me. So I was like, hold on a second. What are you saying? So she was having an affair with this guy. My dad, who's not my real dad, found out. He got drunk. He raped my mum. And we didn't know who the father was. So I demanded a DNA test. For me, this was huge because I'd gone through sexual abuse from men, and I'd always had issues with my father. Anytime he hugged me, I felt like, or even now, I feel like I have to have a shower. So there was something wrong in that relationship. When I spoke to him about the DNA test, and I said to him, this is what Mum's just said, he turned round and said, yeah, but I was drunk. And at the end of the day, she was my wife. And it was her duty. All right. The F-bombs were coming out. I was just... what? So, yeah, I am not a product. That was one of the big things for me. I think I was really scared about was being a product of rape. And I wasn't. At least it was an affair where there was love. Yeah. But that was a huge thing. So when you're talking about things like that, it really, really resonates.
It's a big thing. I couldn't believe over the years how many women I talked to, became friends with, or I worked with, or whoever, that talked about being sexually abused. And to this day, I'm appalled at the numbers. And I'm appalled that it still goes on. I don't understand it. Probably partly because I'm not that kind of person, and I was taught differently. But that's that entitlement thing. That she was my wife. Well, so what? Does that mean you have carte blanche to do whatever you want, whenever you want to do it? And there have been men out there doing this for hundreds and hundreds of years. This is nothing new. And but I think we're at a point where women have had enough, and there's some changes happening, and I think it's...
And men want more as well. The good guys,
yes.
the men that are turning around, and I love it that they're saying, no, they're my children too. If we get divorced, I want custody of them as well. I want to be part of their lives. We are going to carry on having that unit. That our children deserve it. We're adults. We can sort ourselves out, but our children are what we're going to be working together for.
Right. Yeah. And that can remain actually can morph into a beautiful relationship and friendship with your ex-partner, and your focus is doing the best you can for the children, because that you had them together, you both love them, so why wouldn't you want to give them what they need as children and help raise them together and put your differences aside? What didn't work out didn't work out.
That's true, and I couldn't agree more. And I'm really lucky that when I separated and then ultimately divorced, my situation is slightly different. But when we divorced, I was adamant, and we went through some really rough times during that period, whereby there was no money and I wasn't earning and things like that, and you're trying to get money to still give the child support, and as long as that I got that was the priority. But I was doing my best, the best that I could at that time. Could I have done more? Perhaps I could, but I couldn't see how I could do any more. But it's a whole journey. Now, my ex-wife and I, we've never really not got on, even during the divorce. And I think because we decided that, I walked away with nothing, and I left her with the house and the car and everything. I just walked with a bag, and I went, that's yours. Go. But I think we still have a great relationship now. When I go around there, we can have an adult conversation. She's moved on with her life. I've moved on with my life, but our lives are still the same in and around our children. But I also think that, and as they get older, and as we And I've had some issues, and I've had some trials and tribulations. And you know, when I was arrested in Libya and held against my will and all of that, I had this overwhelming feeling that I'd let them down because I didn't leave, because I couldn't leave. When I say I couldn't leave, the very thing that kept me there, the job that I had to do to get all these people, these other families, these women, children, and workers out, meant that I'd lost my last transport. The overwhelming fear, guilt that I had when I got home, and I always remember having a conversation with Holly, who also has just graduated last month from university with honours. So we're both Bob and I are brimming over with pride at this moment. When I turned around to Holly a few years later, and I had the conversation with her, and I went, Holly, I'm really sorry that I let you down because I didn't come home. And she just looked at me and gave me a big hug, and she went, if you'd have come home, you wouldn't have been the man that you are and the man that we love.
Wow.
You had to do. So that's when I, and Kieran took it really hard, and he felt that he'd been abandoned, and he felt that here he is, he's stayed there. He should have come home to us. He doesn't know these people. He doesn't know we're his children. He should have come home to his children. But I just couldn't. It was just that there was something inside me that kept saying, you've got to get these people home. You're going to be okay. You've got to get these people home. And it wasn't until I spoke with the girls, and you're right, girls are different to boys.
But they're nurturers as well. So we know about that nurturing aspect.
And I think the trouble with Kieran was he was very much the boy, and he got bullied a lot at school, but he was also going, he'd be angry in class, and they'd go, Kieran, you need to calm down. And he'd go, I'm not going to calm down because my dad's gone missing and he could be dead. And that's what all he was thinking of. So he had abandonment issues, not because I went, I don't love you anymore. It wasn't because I turned around and said, off you go. Yeah, you're on your own. It was because there was a very specific thing that I had to do, and I had to do that. And once I'd completed that and we could finally get home, then things were a lot better. And I think our relationship, it's still good, but it's not, it's not, I keep trying and keep going, I'm here for you. As I said earlier, he's that much laid back. And I was worried it was me. And when I spoke to my ex-wife about it, she said, it's not just you, it's me as well. He lives in the same house as me. He still lives with his mum. She says, and I don't see him from one day to the next. So it's not you. He doesn't communicate. He's doing his own stuff. He's getting on and he's getting it done. He doesn't see it as a priority. He said, it's not that he doesn't love you. He's the same with me. Whereas the girls are more out there, and it's like we're speaking every other day, and there's always something going on. So yeah, we were always there.
Yeah.
Even
well, that's the main thing. As long as okay, right, because we haven't got much longer left, and what I would love from you guys, any coaching tools or strategies or tips that can help men reflect on how they are being a father. Well, I'll leave it over to you. I'll throw it over to you guys. What reflective questions can soon to be fathers, long-term fathers ask themselves?
That's a really good question. I think one of the questions you ask yourself, even us today, is who do you want to be, and how do you want to show up in the world every day? And to answer that question, you have to reflect. Mm-hmm. You have to go in and decide what kind of, not worry about what kind of man am I going to be. First is what kind of human am I going to be?
Yeah.
And then what example do I want to set so that my children grow up seeing the beauty of life and what life can be. And it's a commitment that you make to yourself first, to become that person and do what you have to do to be that person and portray that to your children. And they will learn it by watching who you become. But I think that's a really big part of it. Staying involved, staying close. They have to be a priority. I remember, here's just one example for me. I remember I got into a partnership in an architectural firm with 3 other people. One of the guys was a really high type A personality. He and I rubbed each other a little bit, but he had his girlfriend, who was one of the partners, call me and kind of sort of give me hell about not coming to a meeting that day. And I said, look, I'll just put this very simply. My daughter's not feeling well. I'm not going to go get anybody to take care of her. This meeting is not more important than my daughter. If you don't like it, and if he doesn't like it, bleep you, basically, because that's my daughter.
Yeah.
And she comes first. And there's something, like I was saying before, you can't fool, you can think you can fool children. You can't fool children into thinking they are loved when they're not.
When they're not.
Yeah. When you really do love them and they know it, there's so much you can get through together.
Absolutely.
So much.
Absolutely.
I mean, when you think of all the stuff that the young boys they're going through from when they're at a young age, the conditioning of what's going on with them, you've got to behave a certain way. On both sexes, girls are conditioned that they've got to be a certain way. Boys are conditioned they've got to be a certain way. With mine, I was always be what you want to be. What do you want to do? You want to do that. That's great. And now I've thought about it for a long time, and I use this in coaching. In fact, I'm going to use it this week. Is that when we talk about conditioning, is that you can still have something that looks very beautiful on the outside, but if fundamentally everything is stifling the growth, then it's not gonna function as it should be. So I now use the analogy of a bonsai tree when we're talking about coaching. And I say you've got this bonsai tree that is the roots are cut to make it smaller. It's put into a small pot so it restricts its growth. Its branches and leaves are manipulated in a way to fit a certain trend, a certain society of how we want it to behave. The bonsai tree looks absolutely beautiful. It looks phenomenal, and it's an absolutely miracle in itself. We can continue to still grow in that and look so fantastic. But there's nothing different between the species. It's the same species of whatever tree that you put in. And if you just leave the original to be in the ground and flourish as it should be, you're going to have a more magnificent, wonderful thing that's out there. And that's what I would say. Let them flourish. Let them grow. Let them be the most amazing, wonderful souls that this universe has put into play.
That's beautiful. Let them. Don't direct them.
Let them be.
Let them be. Let them learn. They will come. They will ask. You will be there to guide them. Obviously, you have to be a participatory parent and be there and have that nurturing nature, which I think we all have it. Some just don't know how to tap into that. But but that's a big thing you said there, Jeff, because it's important to let them develop rather than us start taking the shears out and pruning them on a path. Because, well, for a lot of us, and certainly me and my generation, I can pinpoint every bit of my programming along the way.
Yeah.
I know who I am, who I was before I became who I am, I'll say. I know why I was that person, exactly why. And I never wanted to do that with my children, never would, never will. And it's important. Our children have the birthright to be their best and for them to decide what that is for them.
Yeah, and so do fathers, and fathers have the right to be the fathers that they wish to be. I think before we sign off, some of my reflective questions for fathers who feel that maybe they aren't being the best that they can be, is to take a few minutes to reflect upon what did your father do well? What areas didn't go so well? Or if it's not your father, male role models in your life. And what are you doing well? What's not going so well? And it doesn't matter how old your children are, ask them. And what do they like doing with you? What do they like to do when they spend one-on-one time with you? What do they appreciate about you? And for you to start looking at them and asking and telling them those questions as well. This is what I like about you. This is what I appreciate about you. You will learn so much. You know, as adults, we seem to think it's the material things to make our children happy. If you take the time to talk to them, they appreciate those one-on-one moments, going for a walk, going to the beach, campfire, tinkering in the garage.
As a dad that had girls, it was a shock. I got these two little girls. I had to learn how to braid hair. I had to learn how to. They wanted to cook, and could I cook? No, I couldn't cook. So what did I have to do? Go out and learn. So to those fathers, especially if you've got daughters, you know what? Learn to do the things that they want to do. It's okay to sit down as an adult with a little girl and have a tea party. I remember we went on holiday once, and I got my flip flops on, and the girls were underneath, and I knew they were painting my toenails. And we're going back, I don't know, 16 years. And I'm sat in this airport departure lounge, and they're painting them each a different color of pink, purple, you name it. And I was going to Florida, so I thought I'll fit all right in Florida. It'll be all right.
Sure.
But don't be shy. It's okay, guys. It is okay to do all of that stuff. Not just the boy stuff, not just the go out and play football and rugby and things like that. And if your girls want to play rugby and football, encourage them. Just be there, be in the now, do what they want to do, but do it with love. And that's all I can say. As long as it's with love.
Yeah, exactly. Guys, look, thank you so very much for being so open and honest and sharing some of your past with us. And, can obviously tell you love your children very, very much. I would like to wish you both a very, very happy Father's Day that's coming up. And if you get to spend it with your children, fantastic. If not, I'm sure you'll be jumping on the old Zoom to have a chat with them. So if anybody's got any questions, please pop them in the comment section and we will get back to you. So I would just like to bid you all a very good night. And thank you again, Bob and Shep.
Thank you, Donna.
Thanks, Donna. It's been a pleasure.
Privileged to be here. Thank